Dramatic confrontation between migrants and cops ends with arrests at Randall's Island shelter. That's one way to put it. Another way to put it is NYPD was violently assaulted once again by illegal immigrants. This time, it wasn't just a handful. It was a mob of illegal immigrants in a shelter attacking them. And they call it a dramatic confrontation. You know, look, I have very little sympathy for the NYPD and for New York governance. The police officers there are crooked as they come, complacent, and they deserve everything that happens to their city. And I don't think they care. I really don't. I mean, you get that video from Michael Rappaport, which is really fascinating. You know, he's this comedian who does not like Donald Trump, but now he's like, yo, you got illegal immigrants attacking cops in New York City and all that stuff. And I'm like, Let me tell you, my friends, when Bill de Blasio illegally seized taxpayer funds to paint a political slogan on the street in front of Trump's building, the NYPD, some 26 or 27 officers with smiles on their faces, said, we're going to enforce the seizure of assets, the waste of taxpayer funds, because no one cares. So I see this. I'm like, yo, if you choose to live in New York City and facilitate this as a cop, I have zero sympathy for you. So what's happening now, and it's not, this is the one story to kick things off because things are getting wild. Democrats and Republicans, it's a bill by a Republican, I'm pretty sure, want to give illegal immigrants the opportunity to join the military with a new bill called the Courage to Serve Act. It's on the table. And you have Texas building a base to house 1,800 National Guard to help secure this border in Texas. I mean, in this particular area. It's just getting absolutely crazy out there. I don't even know what to expect at this point. But, you know, I'll say this. I think everything they're doing is good. Let it happen. I think what people in New York are doing, good. Let it happen. And now we got Bill Maher celebrating that Democrats are moving right on the issue. And I'm like, well, they're lying, manipulating the issue to steal votes. But now they've pushed the sentiment towards we have to secure the border. Look, I'll tell you this. I think we're winning in a lot of ways. I think when you look at the collapse of Disney, I don't know if they go out of business, but they certainly lost over $1 billion in their garbage movies. And they're going to make a whole lot more garbage movies and probably lose a whole lot more money. I say good. Good riddance. There are a lot of cultural areas where we're winning. And I think the most important thing is those that believe in American values and, you know, the founding documents, the founding fathers, all that stuff, they have more kids. They have more kids. So you know what? The night is always darkest before the dawn. And I don't know that we have a guaranteed victory, but it certainly seems like we are on the path towards victory. And it is largely due to the ineptitudes and failures of the Democrats and of the leftists. But I do want to tell you something as it pertains to this video, which I'm going to play. LLN NYC posted this video. Migrants attack NYPD cops making arrests at New York City's Randall Island migrant shelter. I mean, you've actually got a video right now of cops being attacked once again by illegal immigrants. I hope that riles people up. But let me tell you what's going to happen. They're bringing in millions of illegal immigrants. Y'all know this. Let me tell you a story. For those that are new to the game, maybe you saw Michael Rappaport. Maybe you followed Michael Rappaport because you don't like Donald Trump. But now he's talking sense. And you decided to take a look into what he's talking about. In 2017, I went to Sweden. 7 years ago. It's kind of wild, isn't it? Because there were numerous reports from people on the right that crime was getting out of hand. The people of Sweden were asking what's going on. Well, many people said it was migrants causing the issue. There were concerns that refugees from the Middle East were coming in, and it was causing very serious problems. So I decided, after Donald Trump went on stage and said, "Did you see what happened last night in Sweden?" You know, I said, okay, let's see what's going on. Why? Well, the media attacked Donald Trump. They said nothing happened last night in Sweden. What are you talking about? Trump, of course, was referring to a mini doc on Fox News about crime in Sweden. So I said, okay, I'll go to Sweden. I'll check it out. And here's what I learned. There was crime from refugees from the Middle East, particularly in the most specific case was young boys from Afghanistan would rape Swedish boys because it's a practice they have, I guess. But I had police officers confirm this to me. It's increased dramatically something we've never seen before, and no one is really talking about it because it paints refugees in a negative light. The majority of crime that was being witnessed was not caused by young Afghani boys raping other boys, but it's a horrifying, atrocious crime. They would go to pools, public pools, and gang up on some kid, and they'd gang rape him. It's a practice they have in Afghanistan, I guess. I actually had police confront it to me. It's crazy, right? Sounds nuts. But as much as that is happening, it's atrocious and it's bad. It wasn't like it was thousands. I think the total amount of cases over a couple of years was like 100 and something, which is kind of terrifying. But the real issue, crime, murder, gang shootings, death, that actually came from the children of Somali migrants for the most part. These children were born in Sweden. They were Swedish citizens. I don't think that they were Swedish citizens by birth. I don't know that Sweden does that, but they were Swedish citizens. Here's the issue. When Sweden brought in waves of refugees, they did not have them assimilate and integrate into Swedish society, creating enclaves where these people would attack police because those police are outsiders. If, let's just say you move to China and you're with, 2,000 white North Americans who live in an area outside a city or in an area of the city. Everyone there speaks English, not Chinese. Everyone there is white. Everyone there believes in the Constitution. You have kids raised there. You would not view the Chinese government as part of your culture. Americans wouldn't do that. And so what happens is these kids grew up, and when the police would come in, they'd say, "You are outsiders." They would reject the police attempts at rule of law, throwing stones and fighting with cops. What do we have here now? We have this video where you actually have migrants. I don't know that we need to play the audio. You can probably hear it a little bit. Trying to arrest somebody who's resisting arrest, fighting back, and the migrants actually begin attacking the cops. So this lady, let me see if I can, it's a long video. You can watch the full video. For the most part, it's like they throw stuff at them. And I think that's the general gist of it, right? The fascinating thing about this is that it's an assault on an officer, which, you're going to get very serious charges, not with these migrants. What I saw with this video, I'm like, this is exactly what I saw in Sweden. The only issue is that Sweden seemed to understand the severity of the problem. There's a city in Sweden. It's called Södertälje. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. It's been 7 years, but let me see if I can pull that up. Södertälje, a city in, let's see, it's just south of Stockholm, right? Here we go. Södertälje. I'm pronouncing that way wrong, probably. Södertälje? I don't know. I don't speak Swedish. And beautiful, beautiful city. I wonder if they actually have the story in here, because at some point, not that long ago, refugees, the children of refugees, in a vehicle with a fully automatic rifle unloaded on, I think it might have been a government building. It's been a long time because they don't view themselves as part of your society. Now, I want you to understand this as we move into the next story, because this is where it gets important. Bipartisan Congress duo unveil bill providing expedited citizenship for immigrants who enroll in the military. We said it was coming. This was the game plan all along. A lot of people pointed out, conservatives, why is it that the illegal immigrants entering the country tend to be military-age males? They're not families. It's not a dad with his kids. It's human traffickers with smuggling victims. Well, it was speculated by many people that the reason was the U.S. government would try to use them to bolster their failing recruitment numbers. Send them off to Ukraine. Seems like this will be the case. When the U.S. formally enters the war in Ukraine to go to war with Russia, which seems increasingly likely, they will need fresh cannon fodder. Well, now they have it. Service guarantees citizenship, as it were. Now, in the concept that we often bring up in terms of the service guaranteeing citizenship, we're talking about people who are born and raised in this country, civilians, who decide they want to participate in civic duty, so they enlist in some kind of public service. That grants them and affords them the right to vote. I like the idea. It's from Starship Troopers, not from Starship Troopers, but it's noted for its depiction in Starship Troopers. Now what's happening is people who are not citizens of this country at all are illegally entering the country, bypassing all our laws, violating our laws, and then uniparty establishment shills. You've got John James and Pat Ryan introduce the Courage to Serve Act on Friday, which provides an expedited path to citizenship for qualified and vetted migrants who serve in the military. Really? John James, that is surprising to me. You know, I suppose I wouldn't be, I shouldn't say I'm surprised, to be completely honest, but it is surprising. But here we go. The legislation addresses two challenges facing the United States: an influx of migrants looking to work, build a better life for their families, and contribute to our country, as well as a recruitment crisis within the ranks of our armed forces, according to a release first shared with the Washington Examiner. Ryan said in a statement on the Courage to Serve Act that he and James know firsthand that there's no higher honor than serving your country in uniform. How shockingly offensive. This is not their country. These are people who march to the United States flying the flag of other nations. It seems like this is the plan. If folks have the courage to raise their right hand, swear an oath to protect and defend this nation, and put their lives on the line, then they sure as hell deserve the opportunity to become an American citizen, Ryan said. Ryan is one of a select few House Democrats who has repeatedly attempted to work across the aisle with Republicans to solve the border crisis. The New York Democrat, considered one of the most vulnerable party members in this election cycle, has supported multiple bipartisan actions this year, frequently joining his home state Republicans in calling the immigrant surge in New York untenable. The Courage to Serve Act is the latest piece of legislation that Ryan has either led or joined with Republicans to sponsor. He pushed to combat the flow of fentanyl into the nation by being the lead Democratic co-sponsor for Stop Chinese Fentanyl Act, a piece of pending border legislation which passed the House in July and is pending in the Senate. James and Ryan's bill comes after a tumultuous week in Washington in which Senate Republicans struck down $118 billion, blah, 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 blah. We get it, we know. Oh boy. So where do we go from here? Here's my vision of the future based on everything we're seeing. There's one of two futures. And I don't know which one's going to happen, but I think it's slightly more likely that the right is winning and wins. The breakdown of the narrative machine, the failures of the I'll give you some scenarios though. But the failures of the corporate press, their collapse means that more and more America First and populist types, their message is spreading. Trump is winning in the polls, and if Trump wins, we can put an end to this. But let me tell you my vision of the future. And we'll work backwards a little bit. We'll start with this. Where does this country go if we allow non-citizens into the country to break the laws, completely disregard them? It is facilitated by the government itself. They are then offered to join the military to become citizens. The end result of let's just call it an international haven for anyone. They are quite literally creating, first, they're dissolving the core of the United States. By bringing in wave after wave of non-citizens to the tune of millions, you will dilute cultural identity, traditional identity, and American values. That is not an attack on any individual. It is a statement of fact based on simple math pertaining to ideologies, countries, research, and data. It's fairly obvious. If you have 10 people who believe you should not be allowed to eat meat on Fridays, then none of them are going to eat meat on Fridays. You bring in 3 people who want to eat meat on Fridays, they're going to have a hard time finding meat. Eventually, someone decides, well, we want to eat meat on Fridays, so we're going to open a restaurant that serves meat on Fridays. And it provides a service to those other people who do. And the people who don't eat, the devout Catholics or whatever religions don't eat meat on Fridays say, well, we won't go there. However, more and more people start coming in. Eventually, there's 20 people who don't mind eating meat on Fridays. And now society is dominated by restaurants all over the place that serve meat on Fridays. That's quite literally where we are right now. It used to be taboo. Deeply religious folks would not eat meat on Fridays. But of course, that's not been for a very, very, very long time that society was dominated by people who would avoid doing this, but they used to. And now here we are. I mean, maybe an extreme example, but certainly now there are people who work on Sundays. There are businesses that are open 24 hours because we have this Neapolitan society emerging. So what happens? Well, traditions and ideologies of this country will be dissolved, will be diluted. People will argue the founding fathers, who cares? That's not relevant to me. I'm not even from here. And they are creating an international, global country. It's not even fair to call it a country. Imagine this. Anyone can come and go as they please. Anyone can work as they please. But if you want to vote in the system, you have to serve the system. They are quite literally creating a service guarantee citizenship in a sort of inverse way, What most of us want when we talk about this is we want a nation where everyone, if they want to vote, they actually are committed to the country. I like the idea to simply start with, you must register for the Selective Service for the draft if you want to vote. If you don't want to do that, then you don't get to vote. You can go one step further and say, even if you're born in this country, you cannot vote in this country unless you qualify in certain ways. Democrats are pushing this in the opposite direction. I don't believe we actually create a service guaranteed citizenship country because Democrats are advocating for non-citizens to have the right to vote. So what happens? The United States will become a nationless landmass, lawless, and it is the beginning of an attempt, in my opinion, or at least whether it's an attempt or not, the dominoes falling over, which will create one world governance and global control, likely under a despotic militaristic regime. All of it sitting right in front of you, staring you in the eyes. Let's break down what we're looking at. The U.S. border has fallen. There is no attempt to secure it except from the state level, and that's only one state out of 4 border states. Donald Trump is fighting. Maybe he wins. But let's imagine the Democrat neocon path forward persists. Donald Trump loses, the populists lose, the border falls. Anyone from anywhere in the world can come here with no questions and no issue. Upon arrival, you are given free money and a place to live. That's what they're doing now. You don't care about this country. You have no allegiance. There is a militaristic force. You can join and serve the empire. They'll send you overseas to take oil or energy and depose and remove anyone who opposes this order. Think about it this way. We'll call it a null space country. When you look at a map, you see on the planet all these different nations and all their borders. The way the U.S. is functioning right now, it may as well just be a null space on that map. There is no country here. The borders are completely open. The laws are being disregarded. The chief political officer of this country is trying to arrest and jail, imprison his political rival. The system is broken. I mean, it's on its last thread. If Donald Trump can win, if we can defeat the new shadow campaign, perhaps we can turn this thing around. There's a possibility. But considering that we are seeing people on the right having substantially more kids than those on the left, it's no surprise they are flooding this country with non-citizens to destroy and dilute this nation. Eventually, there won't be borders. I mean, there already aren't, as far as any of us can tell. States like California want them to come in. The federal government flies them on private jets, gives them cash and places to live. They're being given full luxury hotels paid for by your labor. So what happens in the future? Okay, you have this landmass where anyone can go. There are laws to a certain degree, but they're not enforced. I mean, look, let's be real. Migrants attack cops, and what happens? They get released right away. They got released again. Migrants just attacked cops in New York City. I ain't do nothing about it. One guy was getting arrested. They attack the cops do nothing. The laws will not be enforced. It will be a wild, wild west, but this will, in essence, untether. It's going to create something really interesting. The military-industrial complex of the United States, the invasive force, the military force of NATO, won't be tethered to any nation or accountability anymore. They will seemingly have an endless supply of people who want free wealth. They will come to this country and say, I don't care, I'll do whatever you say. And the military-industrial complex and the military machine of the United States will start bringing in people who are not Americans to serve its machine. What does that mean? The U.S. military is becoming untethered from the country and its laws. It is trying to bring in non-citizens and become an international military force with no accountability. When you have tens of thousands of non-citizens in that military, it is an international military force. It is, outright. Where no individual has allegiance to any country, they have allegiance only to the machine itself. So we're looking at the start of global domination. Why do you think it is they're trying to push Americans out of the military? The military will become untethered from American values, and you will have non-citizens, people who speak different languages, with no allegiance to each other, no allegiance to a constitution. There will be no real country. They'll say they pledge allegiance to this country, but the country is going to be an amalgam of various people from all over the world who don't care for each other at all. There's no cohesive legislation, no cohesive laws, no shared cultural identity. And then you will have a military apparatus, the most powerful the world has ever seen, and it will be an international body. And then you have the makings of one world governance, a global police force. I imagine, you could see it like in 20 or 30 years, a law gets passed saying the U.S. military forces should be overseen by an intergovernmental panel because they're too powerful. After the war with Russia leads to devastation, then you'll get some kind of international consort saying it's time for a new world order. A world order in which the military of the United States is not the supreme body that can impose its will, but will be overseen by an international body, such as the United Nations, who can determine when and where military should be deployed and dispatched for the purpose of securing our planet. I don't know. I'm not saying it happens. I'm saying the path is right there in front of us. There's another path. That path is that Donald Trump wins, the shadow campaign, round 2, is defeated, and Trump begins mass deportation of all these individuals. Entirely possible. Here's another scenario for you. Donald Trump wins, and he wins because the powerful elites want him to. Problem, reaction, solution. They want Trump to win. They want Trump to try and mass deport. They want photos and videos of people being loaded onto buses and trains. And they'll come out and they'll go, "We said never again, but it's happening." They'll call Trump Hitler. This will lead to, call it whatever you want, internal conflict in the United States, international conflict. Whatever ends up happening, Trump ends up losing and is removed because he's only going to be president for 4 years. And that will be the pretext. They will say the atrocities that we've seen under Donald Trump can never happen again. That's why a new body will be formed. Now, I don't know what happens. Some people say optimism bias, normalcy bias. I don't know. But if Donald Trump does engage in a mass deportation campaign and videos emerge showing people loaded on trains and buses, they're going to show mothers being taken from their children. There will be people weeping in the streets. There will be reports of people dying in these quote unquote concentration camps. They've already primed everyone for this. AOC called the border camps created by Barack Obama concentration camps over and over and over again. That's the narrative they will run with. And when Donald Trump leaves office or loses power or civil war or something happens, the crisis will lead to an opportunity for either side for dramatic and massive change. In the event the right loses, the Democrats will expand. They will destroy the borders. They will bring in non-citizens, and they will say this can never happen again. The international community will blame Donald Trump. I say international community, but Western forces, NATO, etc., will say, you see what happens when despots and dictators, blah, blah, blah. There could be world war, but the aftermath, like we saw after World War II, will lead to something like the creation of the liberal economic order. Problem, reaction, solution. Perhaps that's what happens. I don't know for sure. It's all fairly grandiose. Perhaps normalcy bias is the correct approach. Everything will simmer down. Things will just increment forward. But either way, whether there's going to be a mass crisis, conflict, war, or otherwise, we are incrementing in the direction as I've described it. They are trying to get non-citizens to join the U.S. military. What happens when you have people with no allegiance to any country who form this, what would essentially be an international military force? Sure, it could operate under the United States, but come on, what does that really mean? The people fighting in it don't have any American values at all. We can't allow that. But I suppose we'll see. I'm going to leave it there. Next segment is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.